Hello everyone. So in this tutorial, I will give you a brief overview about the new feature which is which will be a part of the Java 9 and what in short we call it as a JShell or a REPL. So if you're already familiar with the Scala or Groovy, you don't need an introduction to the JShell or this new feature. But if you are not familiar with the Scala or the Groovy, so this JShell is basically a shell interface that read the line, each line of input and evaluate that line, right? So it's basically a kind of a scripting uh, feature which basically gives you a real-time analysis. And one of the interesting feature with the JShell is normally when you're writing your Java program, you have to write your program inside. You have to wrap your code inside a method or inside a class. So let's say if you want to create a simple Hello World application, first you have to create a class, maybe a method. You have to write your print statement, and then you will be compiling your code, you will execute it, and eventually you will get a hello world out of it. So it's basically a lot of setup you have to do just to write that simple program. And think about when you want to quickly test your code or your logic whether it's working fine or not, and then you want to move that code to the build process, right? So in order to sort those kind of problems, uh, JShell will be your friend in that case. So as I said, some of the JVM based languages like Scala or Groovy, they already have a built-in support for this one. But for Java, this is going to be something new. I'm assuming that you already have Java 9 installed on your machine. So if you don't have that in your machine, I think it's the best time to install it, play around with the JShell. So in order to start, I will just give you a brief overview. So in order to check whether things are working fine, you just write JShell, uh, and if everything works fine, it will give you a unique style of welcome message. So that means that everything is perfectly fine your machine. The other thing which I was talking about, that you don't have to wrap up your code inside a method or inside of a class. So let's say if I want to write a simple hello world program on the JShell, all I'm doing is just writing it straight, sorry for that, and here we go, right? You don't have to create a class, you don't have to wrap anything inside your program. Okay. Another interesting feature with the JShell is normally when you're writing this hello world application, if you remove this semicolon, there will be a compilation error. But with the JShell, if you run this program, it will work fine because JShell understands the context and it will add that semicolon for you. It will run the program. Uh, Next thing which I will be going to talk to you is the default import statement. That's a part of the JShell. So what does that mean? So basically, JShell by default get you a set of common import, and if you want to check what are those default import statements, just run this program. Sorry for that. Slash import, and you should have a list of the default set of the import statements. Another interesting feature with the JShell is the expressions. It understands the expressions. If you use any valid Java expressions, it understands, it evaluates those for you, and ultimately it will give you the results. So let's have a look at it. I will be using a simple expression 2 plus 3. So eventually it's a valid expression in Java, right? You're going to add 2 plus 3, which eventually will be 5. But how the JShell will be handling it, that's going to be interesting. So if you see, it gave us an idea about, okay, the output is 5. And interestingly, it created a scratch variable for you. That's basically a $3, assign a 5 to it, and give you output. Another interesting part of this one, it gives you the return data type, right? So 2 plus 3 equal to 5, which is an integer type. So you can use JShell down the line in future if you want to understand what will be the return type of a specific calculation. So you can use JShell smartly to check it out. You can define your variables in the JShell. So let's say I want to define int I is equal to 5. One that will work for me. So it created a variable I of the type int. I can even create a string s is equal to mesh. What will happen? I did a mistake, right? I need to wrap it in the quotes. So it created a variable for me, right? It basically understand, okay, string s is you can basically create a variable for a date, or you can create an integer, you can create a double, anything, whatever you want to create. Next we will go through how you can create a method. So let's see how we can create a method in JShell, or even how we can override, or we can change a method into the JShell. So I will start with a simple hello world application, or a hello world method. It will simply print hello world statement. Hello world. This is a simple hello world statement. So if you see, the output is, it says okay, it created a hello world method. So if I just want to run a hello world method, I will say hello world, sorry, my bad. So it prints a hello world output, which was a part of the system.out.println. Let's say I want to change this method. How can I do that? So because you are already into that context, JShell understand that context, and it can change it for you. So I will say hello world from JShell. If you look into the output, it says okay, it modified the original hello world method. And if I run that program again, it's a hello world from the JShell. So that's, so practically you can write any method here. I just give you an idea what the hello world, but you can have a method to connect with maybe some some API, or even you can run your logic inside that method, if whatever the method you want to test, and you want to deploy it on some other system, right? Or even if you are running a program just for the testing purpose, you can do that. The JShell also comes with a certain different commands which are basically not I would say related to evaluating your Java code, but they are very helpful if you want to get an understanding what is going around. Let's say if you run a certain number of certain code, and you know, want to check what are the different variables in my program, whatever that, what are the different variables I have used in my program, right? All you have to do is forward slash use bars, and it will give you the list of all the variables. Because I haven't used any of the variable, let's define one. Okay, I is equal to 5, string s is equal to Umesh. Okay, so maybe we can define double t is equal to 0.5. And now let's see what will be the output of our program. Here it is, right? So I have a context, I define 3 different variables, and when I run a batch, it gives me the what was the variable that was defined in the current context, or into the current working session. Similarly, you can use methods. There is another command, forward slash methods, which gives you an idea what are the different methods that was defined within the context. So if I say methods, because I created only a single method in the context, that was a hello world, so it gives me an idea, okay, what is the method being defined. If you're not sure about what are the different options available in the JShell, you have the help. command. If you run this one, it gives you all the different options. What are the options being provided by the JShell? Let's say if I say history, it gives you all the history what I have done in the current context. So I created a method and then I run it hello world, then again run it the hello world. I changed my method, again run hello world. I executed a bear command. So it gives you all sort of that information. If at any point you are doubtful, just go with the forward slash help, and it will give you the context. The another thing is, let's say if you want to list the source code, what is the source code for that? I can use the list command. It gives you, okay, what what is the what is the total, what is the overall source code I was using it. So if you see, I created a hello world, and then there was a hello world definition. I run that one. I defined the different variables. So those sort of things you can basically do with the list command. If you want to save it, you can save basically this the output of the list method. So list method is basically, if you it's easy, right? If you in short, it's easy. You forget about what were the variables you have, or or the other kind of things. You can even save your the current this source code by using forward slash save, and then you can name it anything. I will say it REPL.java, so it will save it. And so as of now it will save. In this section we will learn about few of the very interesting and advanced features of JShell. So one of them is check exceptions. So normally when you are creating or running a program, and uh, let's say you are using a method which throws a checked exception, you are forced to handle that exception. But with the JShell, it basically handle that thing for you in the background, so you don't have to worry about the checked exceptions. So let's take an example. I'm going to read a file from a pipe or from a location. So normally, if you run this program, you will be forced to catch IO exception, and either you will be handling it through try catch, or maybe you have to add it to your method signature. But with this one, you don't have to worry about handling that checked exception. So let's run this program. What happened? Okay, sorry, my bad. So it basically created a path. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use stream API. Stream lines equal to files dot lines with path, and the last part is we will be reading it. Okay. Stream for each. So it basically gives you an output. It read that program demo.java and will give you an output. The interesting part was I never handle. I was not handling the IO exception on it. I will be talking about very interesting another feature in the with the JShell, and that we call is as a forward referencing. What does that mean? That it gives you very handy support for the forward referencing. So you can define a function that that basically refer to some other methods or a variable which basically you are planning to add down the line. Those you haven't defined those one, but basically you want to you have a plan to define it at a later stage. But you can basically use those as a forward references. So what does that means? Let's quickly look into a sample program which gives you an idea what I'm talking about as a forward referencing. So let's see if I run this program. So what I'm doing here is I created a function basically. So the interesting part with this program is I created this function. It's a get balance, which the intention is I will pass a customer number and it will give me the balance associated with the customer. But if you see, I haven't defined this method anywhere in my code. It's just a reference that I'm planning to use it somewhere down the line, and this is what we call as a forward referencing. When I'm executing this program, uh, it's working fine for me, right? The only thing which it says, okay, it created a method get customer balance, but I won't be able to use this method until I declare get balance method. So it knows the context. It will not allow me to execute this method till I define a get balance. But it's really handy when you are basically structuring your program, and you can basically define it, and maybe down the line you can use it. Uh, the last part which I want to talk about the JShell is the JShell API. So the one which I'm working right now, it's a part of the standalone JDK toolset. I'm using it from the JDK, but it gives you an API which you can basically execute or you can use uh, not from your own machine, or maybe a JRE or JDK installed on a remote machine, and you can hook to the API provided by the JShell, and you can perform a number of different operations using that API. That's a really interesting thing. Think about it. You have your server, or you have your remote server, and you can create a way where you can connect to your remote server using a JShell, and you can practically execute a different set of functions, right? That's one of the other intention, or I would say the feature uh, as part of the JSON. And the really interesting feature for me, it's going to be a handy tool for me on day-to-day activities where I don't have to go with all that build cycle. I can quickly build my logic. I can quickly run it, see, okay, am I getting a right output from my logic? If everything looks good, that's the time when I will be moving my code to the main code base, and I can go ahead with the main deployment. So I hope that you get some overview for the new features of this JShell. I'm really excited about this new feature, and hopefully you you are equally excited.